Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll start in 5 to 6 minutes just to let the people time to join. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll just wait a few more minutes for people to let people time to come in, and we'll start. Great. Thanks for joining, everybody. My name's Guillaume, and I'll introduce myself right after. Thanks for joining our webinar on how OneStream can help you transfer your finance at a federal agency. Particularly, we are going to speak about how federal PPB transform the, landscape of our speaker, Mike Emerson at the Defense Health Agency. So we'll get more into it right away. So my name is Guillaume. I'm a Senior Director, Financial Performance Consulting at RCGT. And I have with me Mike Emerson, Division Chief or Defense Health Agency, Financial Planning and Analysis. So we will be speaking to you on that subject today. We have a small agenda. First, about RCGT. So who is RCGT in Canada? What is OneStream? And then we will get into the main of our subject on how DHA, the Defense Health Agency in the US, used OneStream. So we will introduce the DHA. We will introduce their PPBE solution that they built for the planning, programming, budgeting, and execution. Then we will get into the people planning solution that they are currently implementing and what they are looking forward to. Then we will show you how you, a Canadian federal agency, can procure OneStream. So first, about RCGT. RCGT is a member of Grant Thornton LLP. We are Raymond Chabot Grant Thornton, so headquartered in Montreal, Quebec, but part of the Grant Thornton family in Canada and in the whole world. We have more than 200 offices in Canada, 100 in Quebec, 5,600 professionals, and more than 450 partners. We've been around for 75 years with more than 50,000 clients just in Quebec. Our approach is we have local teams, as you can see by the number of offices in Canada, but the resources of a big expert firm, a large firm that can provide an array of different services. If we look at those services, of course, we can provide the classic accounting things like audit, reviews, compilation. We do tax, we do financial consulting. And there where we stand out is we can provide an array of advisory services. In those advisory services, there are some that are more the main focus of discussion these days, like cyber security, Law 25. But today, the main subject of what we're going to discuss is digital and technological transformation. And to assist you with this, we have a financial, a finance function performance services. And in this, what we do have is basically two core services: financial solution deployment and business transformation. In financial solution deployment, what we can do is combine the knowledge of technology with our knowledge of finance to help you create tools within your organizations that will assist your everyday operations. Where with business transformation, we can also assist you on how we can transform your current processes to be more precise, to be more efficient, and then deploy a solution that's tailored to those new processes, to the business need. To be able to do such things, we have the financial deployment team. The financial deployment team is basically a team that can provide three types of services. First, it's the enterprise performance management, which OneStream is a part of. So that's the solution we deploy for that part of our services. So planning, budgeting, financial forecast, year-end closing, accounts reconciliation, management, analysis and reports. We can do predictive models and etc. So a lot can be done with this part that we're gonna be able to provide you with an array of example because of our speaker here today, Mike, with all the examples he'll be able to provide to you guys. but we can also provide robotic process automation and cash management. So what is OneStream and why do you even care, basically? Why are you even here? What's OneStream? So OneStream is a company that started a few years ago and that wanted to provide services into the financial landscape, budget, forecast, consolidation, and stuff like that. What's OneStream? It's now today more than 1,500 customer, and it's one of the most with the most sophisticated companies. So these companies are 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 part of a lot of different industries. A key point at OneStream is you can see one of the big stats here is 100% customer success. What that means is OneStream makes it a goal that all of their customers are referenceable. They won't pursue any project unless they're 100% confident that it will be a success. And to be held accountable about that 100% success, it's super simple. They'll provide you a list of all their clients. So I mentioned there's 1,500 customers. They'll provide you the list. And when you ask for a contact, for a name, they'll provide it to you, and they'll basically tell you to contact their client and ask them, talk to their customer and ask them why did they select OneStream, how is the process going going on OneStream, or how is their operations today, how did OneStream bring value. So that's OneStream in terms of the mission of what they want to provide to their customers. For you guys in the public sector, it's 100 customers and 79 in the federal space, mainly in the States, but we see now a few in Canada, and I'll come back to this. Backtrack 5 years ago, there was maybe 3 to 5 agencies, but as you can see in the last 5 years, the federal government did put their faith into them, and in turn, been seeing results for implementing OneStream. Some of these includes the Department of Homeland Security, General Services Administration, the US Coast Guard, but one of the biggest federal customer they have right now is the US Army in the States. I told you there was some in Canada. So in Canada, there is the government of Alberta that did choose OneStream moving forward as its financial as its EPM platform. There's the government of Ontario and Metrolinx that have adopted the platform. So if we get into why OneStream, what is OneStream? Basically, you guys, federal agency, have challenges. You have a lot of different stakeholders. There's controller, grants management, office of the CFO. There's all these different agencies. And within the agencies, you have all the different stakeholders, and you all have different needs. So to answer those different needs, you all have different tools. So one needs to consolidate all the data from all the different subsidiaries. One needs to be able to provide financial reporting to the stakeholders, management reporting. There's a team that needs to do planning and budgeting, forecasting, and stuff like that. So you all have different tools, but a lot of the times those tools are not enough. So on top of those tools, you add other solutions like ad hoc reporting. You need to do some account reconciliation, workforce planning. One of the biggest thing in an agency, you need a tool to be able to do the workforce planning that will feed the budget, the forecast. You are asked to do a long range planning when it's budget season and stuff like that. So now you add more complexity on top of it. But what happens is then you need even more stuff to make all of these work together. You need Excel to do some analysis, a lot of Excel on the side. Data comes from multiple different sources. You have an SAP, you have a Workday here, you have some agencies may have Oracle, some agencies have SAP. So you're trying to get all that data together. And how is it connected? Well, I would say like a spaghetti. There's all these lines in here that you can see that you have all these kind of integration, but they're not really. Sometimes it's just somebody taking data from one side to the other, putting this in Excel, trying to make it talk, trying to understand, trying to provide some kind of reporting. You're and it makes the whole thing very difficult for everyday operations. What all of this brings is risk. Risk that the data is not really what it's supposed to be because it's been manipulated. It costs a lot in e either in technical debt, having all these different solutions, but also in time for your resources to be able to gather all that data from everywhere and put it into one report that will provide you the information that you need. It's complexity. I think the slide speaks for itself. The landscape is super complicated. It's not really scalable. Every time there's a change that is needed, you need IT, you need help, you need to touch this and that system, and etc. It's a lot of integration, and what comes with all of this, it's a lot of technical debt. There's a lot of tool. And Mike, I don't know for you, I guess it was like that before you guys implemented OneStream, right?
Yes, we definitely had a spaghetti warehouse, a lot of Excel documents, and then of course pulling data from other systems that we have to go with our budget. So it definitely is a complex map, just like this photo shows.
Yeah, and the next slide that I'm going on right now is basically what it looks like with OneStream, because with OneStream, the founders understood the limitation they had with all that complexity, and they took another approach, creating a platform to solve all these challenges. So at a high level, rather than having all those different systems and etc., they created one platform that incorporates all these different tools within one tool, and that way you get best of breed tools all within one platform. You don't have to play with data. And the beauty of this is that you can consume which solution you want and you'd like as you grow and change. Many times we'll see customers start with the most pressing issues like budget and reporting on the initial phase, then transition to, and just like Mike will show you right after, transition to workforce planning. Then they can do consolidation and close and so forth. So there's a lot that can be done within that one platform and replace all those different point solutions into one big platform that makes everything available. So it really allows you to start where you want to start, and the platform can evolve with you over time. So now we'll get into the Defense Health Agency at a glance, but before we have a conflict of interest disclosure that we need to address. So you can read the text, but basically what it says is that the views and basically everything that we say within that webinar are the views of myself and Mike, and not the views of the Department of the Defense, the US government, nor the Defense Health Agency. So it's our views, it's our speaking, I would say. So just a little disclosure. So Mike, the floor is yours on the
Yeah,
Defense Health Agency.
yeah. No, appreciate that. And the bottom line is, uh, I'm here to basically tell my journey, my story of how we adopted the implementation of OneStream. So happy to be here this afternoon. Just real quick, I'm not going to read the overall slide, but ultimately, the Defense Health Agency is really a relatively new agency within the Department of Defense that had the goal starting back in 2017 to basically consolidate all of our planning and programming around our military health system as it relates to the management and control of the military treatment facilities. And so with that, you can imagine high dollars of budget and people, and also a level of responsibility that we inherited from the medical services within the Department of Defense, they had been managing these things and these programs for decades. And so as you transform and consolidate into a new agency, there's definitely challenges that you quickly learn and leverage. So next slide, please. So just real quick, ultimately, we have over 45 hospital inpatient facilities across the globe. Additionally, we have 566 military ambulatory care and occupational health clinics across the globe. And so with that, as you can imagine, comes a lot of stakeholders and a lot of individuals that need information, data, financial information quickly. Ultimately, our O&M budget is $16.9 billion. And then our whole unified medical budget, which comes beyond just the dollars that really support those hospitals at the local level. And so when you think about that $16.9 billion is spread against all those different ambulatory care centers, hospitals, and dental clinics. But in addition to that, we have what we call our unified medical budget, which is a much larger number at $55.8 billion. And that's because it takes into account requirements for large construction projects, large procurement of expense equipment, MRI machines, things of that nature. And then additionally, we have our what we call private sector care, where we buy, healthcare from the private sector to treat our beneficiaries in our population. And so that's another level of spend that we have to manage and control. And so as you can see right there, just with those opening statements, what I'm probably going to get into as we go through why we needed something to help manage that. Next slide, please.
Perfect. So Mike, I'd like to discuss the planning and budget effort within your office and that of your greater stakeholders. First, describe us resource data challenges facing for the Defense Health Agency, and specifically the challenges you face in the role as programming division chief of the DHA.
Yep. Awesome. So, as I said, new agency, new responsibilities, really the transformation of those responsibilities started in the 2017, 2018 timeframe. One thing that we basically inherited was a system that managed all the data at a very high aggregate level. And so really we just had those large budget numbers at it's such a super high level, that we had $9 billion for these type of requirements, $2 billion for IMIT. Well, what does that mean when you're talking about IMIT? And ultimately, all that high level aggregate data, even though there wasn't a lot of details, it still was warehoused in over 200 Excel files. And ultimately, every 3 to 4 months, we would have to copy those over and reestablish, because for our business, we have what we call the planning, which is looking at the future phase needs and requirements for future fiscal years or future years of execution. The programming, which starts to bring that lens into a 5-year profile. The budgeting, which is setting you up for the next year of dollar spend or what you're going to do with your money and your people. And then ultimately execution, which is real time, really spending the money, paying the bills. And so that's the reason we call it the PPB&E. Is it's a lens of processes and step down. And so as we would move from one cycle of ingestion in planning phases or programming phases, we'd have to flip those 200 Excel files. And so most of our staff, in a small team of staff members, really was spent more with copying and pasting into a SharePoint these Excel files, not really having a level of detail. And with that, as I mentioned, the hundreds of locations across the globe that we set up budgets for, we had no tracking from a planning, programming, and even to an extent, the budgeting of those MTFs. It really was driven by the year of execution. And so a lot of folks, whatever they had received the year before would kind of be their starting point. If you needed to reshape them or rechange them, we didn't have that level of understanding. And so additionally, with having Excel documents that are not locked or auditable on why somebody made a change, that was another source of risk. And so ultimately in December of 2019, we started our journey to look for a solution to help us automate, streamline, and become more effective in our jobs. And that's when we selected the COTS product, the commercial off-the-shelf OneStream, to implement. And what does that mean? Ultimately with a COTS product, um, your data, your data structure, your cost structure and stuff is different from every other agency, right? And so the backbone of that COTS product gives you that general overview implementation, but then you have to work with an integrator to kind of see how you're going to leverage that aspect. And so we started that journey in 2019. Next slide, please.
Yes, and how did you envision digital transformation and as being something that would basically answer those business challenges and remove these pain points?
Yeah, exactly. And so ultimately, with us, the OneStream platform, we refer to it in-house as the Medical Planning, Programming, Budgeting, and Execution Tool, MP squared bet. And the goal with that, right, was to automate, standardize, and ultimately link our internal PPB&E process to performance management and maximize our time and ultimately allow for better analysis. Because like I said, with our staff having to, copy over Excel documents, their time really was spent more with, almost a secretarial type of responsibility, with not actually being able to delve into why did the budget need to increase, or why has it been decreasing? What is the validation of the requirements or the spend that we're doing? And so ultimately we needed a system that could become our official documentation, linking dollars with manpower. Within our business structure, 70% of our spend is on salary. And so with that, we needed to know, to the eaches, the level of salary requirements. And in the medical community, as an example, we inherited a system where they used an average cost per body, which was okay in the past. But as you're trying to make real-time decisions on hiring nurses, docs, versus, a logistics person that is ordering supplies in the warehouse, those values and cost of that manpower is much different. The pay scale is much different. And so to get real decision space, if you're trying to justify or look for potential savings in the future, you have to have a better forecasting mechanism that really leads to that skill set or that staff engagement that they bring to the table. And ultimately, we needed to be able to support, for us in our system, we have to develop what is called the president's budget. With that comes justification material that we have to turn over to ultimately the department and Congress ultimately. And so we needed something in one place versus pulling data from multiple systems, going into another system to, write in Word documents, present in Excel documents. Having a tool where all of that capability was in one place to develop your presentations, to develop your papers, your outputs, and pull the numbers into that story was very critical. And that's the one benefit that we really saw as we were leveraging and pivoting to this system. Next slide, please. The next few slides are some of that, what I call the wow factor for our leadership. That previously, we'd have to go pull data from an Excel document and build within Microsoft somewhere or another platform dashboards, right? And start telling that picture of what we're spending our money on, or getting it where leadership can quickly understand. And so, these are just some examples where we can see, trend immediately between fiscal years or points of places. And so for us now, we're able to program and plan all the way down to an individual location within the country. And ultimately, the goal of the dashboards are, leadership can click on a location up comes another dashboard that they can keep drilling into to get an understanding of what we're investing in a certain location, or what is the manpower at a certain location. And so that's the goal of what you see with getting into one single tool that pulls in your data from all these different sources. Next slide. Once again, just more capability of these dashboards, and really the the benefit to your leaders to be able to see trends quickly. Next slide, please. And not only for us did we want to go out to our lower level locations, but additionally, our headquarters, our back office support staff, right? Getting data structure for what they're spending dollars on are just as critical as your downstream users and executioners. And the other benefit, and I think that's the piece that we sometimes we don't talk about enough with these dashboards or having the data in one single place, is the transparency that it can start to bring to your whole organization, right? And that's one of those key facets, is that, I grew up my background is, military, healthcare, budget tier, and it's always the budget person knows, the dollars that's going to be allocated for X, right? And so you always had to go find that individual. But as you adopt automation and you adopt these platforms, you can get read access to other stakeholders, other middle managers in the organization, and they quickly can get the same level of output or understanding of what you're spending your dollars on, or where you're planning to spend your dollars on 3 years from now, in one place. And you as the budgeteer can have confidence that they're using the right information, because that is one thing that in our organization we've had challenges over the years, is people will go pull data from system X, not bring it past the budget shop, who kind of knew why there might have been a deviation, a nuance, or context to what somebody's using. By getting yourself into these platforms like this, you're able to make sure everybody's pulling the data, pulling the information the same way, the same understanding, and you don't lose that context. Next slide, please. And so, like I said, there is the art of the possibility is what I look at when it comes to dashboarding. The first part is working with an implementation team on your data structure. That's the key aspect, right? Once you have your data structure, you know the source of where you're pulling the data from or what other platforms, and you get that cross relationship organization developed, then the art of the storyboard, the art of the pictures, is what really, to me, it becomes the selling point for your leaders and your other stakeholders.
Right, Mike. Can you walk us through some of the key differentiators you identified at the beginning of the project, and where the program currently stands in terms of plannings and budgeting? Are there any quantifiable benefits they have emerged?
Yeah, sure. Next slide, please. So ultimately, we reduced our time to flip from Excel database data files, which used to take, upwards to 30 days to move those 30 or those 200 plus Excel documents into a new phase or a new part of our planning, programming, budgeting, execution world, to basically minutes. Ultimately, as soon as we want to, flip from one cycle to another, you know, we trigger in the system and it happens, basically in the snap of fingers. And you're not spending days and hours trying to make sure that the position that you closed with is still accurate in those hundreds of Excel documents. It's immediately, right? So with the automation, to be able to do that, like I said, in the snap of a finger is key to reducing the time that we would spend on chasing down errors, right? The other aspect is, when we were in the Excel world, if we all of a sudden needed to add a new data element and a new data structure or something, it would take weeks to go add, to make sure that what we call a program element or an accounting code in each one of those Excel files, because they ultimately all talk to each other, right? Now we can just go into the system, immediately inject, say, hey, we're establishing a new accounting line or new programming element, and it immediately goes into the system, can immediately start being used, and you're not having to go manually add those things. The other big aspect, and it's something we're working through right now, is the collection of our end of year actuals. So, the prior fiscal year ultimately was a very labor intensive process where we would have to send an Excel document out saying to everybody, this is what we set your budget at by the different, accounting codes. And they would have to do debits and credits within an Excel document that then we would get back. We'd copy paste that into another Excel document way that we could relink everything to tell our story. Now we can actually take the flat files from our accounting systems, upload it into the tool, and our previous year execution is immediately available to then start being viewed against future year requirements. And so the benefits of saved from time alone is huge. The data quality is increased tremendously, where you're not receiving all those hand jam errors, and you wouldn't have to go back and dig through the spaghetti of what file was incorrect, which one didn't map correctly, and it leads to more confidence when you're actually trying to justify what you're doing with your job. Next slide.
It feels like huge is an understatement of the size of those benefits, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So turning our attention to a part of the MP2 Bet project that is particularly interesting because it deals with manpower data rather than just finance. It seeks to close the gap between manpower planning and the greater budget planning efforts.
Yep. Yeah, so in one of the key aspects, like I said, my background is definitely financial. But the one thing that I quickly learned young in my career is that uh, the management of your manpower, understanding how you're, executing those work years or those full-time equivalents is just important. And ultimately, some organizations, they track manpower separately from the finances of it. And we really are about trying to link the manpower requirement or the individual FTE requirement with an allocation of dollars. Some people will, give a budget of, $10 million for manpower, and whatever that individual organization or cost center is going to execute is really up to that manager, um, with very little fidelity back. And I had a mentor early on in my career that talked about, you really need to define as a planner and a programmer a little bit more fidelity to that. If you are expecting that they should be able to hire, 100 people with that $10 million, then you should be annotating that in a same data source to show that you're wanting them to hire 20 physicians and 30 nurses and whatever the makeup of that organization is to be, and not just program manpower without the dollars or dollars undefined without the manpower. And so ultimately that's where the people planner solution that I saw as a demo with OneStream early on definitely was intriguing, because for us ultimately our manpower is made up of multifaceted work staff. We have contractors, we have government and civilian employees, and then of course our military staff. And each one of those are financed a little bit differently, managed a little bit differently, and ultimately is tracked in different systems differently when it comes to HR, payroll, and all of those aspects. And so basically having a place that can bring in all of the data from other sources into one warehouse where we can see that was that relationship challenge that we were looking at when we started down our people planning journey. Next slide, please. So right now, we're in the initial stages. We're doing our pilot, basically looking for our running through a test phase of that and making sure that we can understand to the lowest level, right? To that location that may be out in California, over in England, or wherever the case may be, that whole site picture of not only what have we allocated as what we call a space to be hired against, but then has that space been actually filled with a human body, a payroll, right? And so that is the aspect of the solution, is tying those things together. Once again, the goal there is to bring transparency. My career, I started out a military treatment facility, and ultimately I would have a financial manpower document, and then to find out if those spaces were filled, we had to pull data from another, and we would create our own, hybrid merging of these data sets together. And what we're trying to bring as an agency wide is a solution, and that's what the people planner is, ultimately bringing something that we put in the hands of our staff at the lowest level, where they're not doing their own ad hoc reports, not doing their own ad hoc pools, but we basically create a tool that everybody in our enterprise can use to do and manage the same problem. And so we collaborated with our key stakeholders um, on this most viable product and those aspects. And that's really the key also with, I think, data automation, transformation, and other things, is not only leveraging, in a sense, the resourcer or a manpower expert, but also bringing in some of those lower level folks that are actually going to utilize the
Mm-hmm.
tool to have input on how you're building that. Because sometimes, from the 20,000-foot level, something will look simple, but then when you start getting into the lower level, the tactical level, the operational level, something that you may not have been aware of is in play there. Next slide, please. And so this is ultimately, just a mock-up of the goal, right? Is to ultimately, once again, create dashboards where the data is behind the scenes, right? You have people that will pull data from whatever system, whatever record, do whatever inputs behind the scenes. Your leaders and other managers, this is where their meat and potatoes live, right? Is the collation of those cross intersections quickly to show um, what was planned to be spent, where we're at to date with our spend, as it comes to what positions are filled or vacant, how long has a position been vacant. That is all information they need at their fingertips. And when you're able to successfully implement this, to have that level of detail available for all, that saves tremendous amount of time and effort, because we all know that downstream we have work centers that are doing a lot of this stuff already. Ad hoc, though, are on the side. And so the goal when we're looking for efficiencies and effectiveness and standardization comes with the single source. Next slide, please. And so, the goals right there, improve data management. I think I've said that was the goal of the planning and programming aspect that we initially started with. It continues even in today's, next stage, the people planner. As a budgeteer programmer, and in my role and my responsibility as an example, the human capital management or real-time manpower management isn't something that I was responsible for or have authority over. What I did is I saw the art of the possibility, and then I reached across to another part of the organization whose responsibility is that human capital management and understanding, and said, would you like to leverage something that the organization's already going to have, because I needed it for my job, for my key responsibility, but ultimately it has things that can help you also. Improved reporting, that's key. I think improved reporting, communication, that transparency helps buy trust within the organization. And ultimately, automated processes and streamlined workflows, that improves job satisfaction. When you hire and you employ a bunch of analysts, they really don't want to be spending all their time worrying about the quality of the data that they've pulled together to look at. They're more about, actually giving recommendations to leadership. And then ultimately your leaders, they want to be able to have informed decision making. They want to have a little bit more the behind the why, that you may need requirements or more dollars or more people. And so having all that data quickly available is all goals to be achieved. Next slide.
Great. So given the promising feedback you're already receiving, what are some of the strategic next steps?
Yeah, and so with that, like I said, and I think you said it early on, where you can start with a different aspect of what
Uh-huh.
is your key need in an organization, right? And so initially, when we started back in 2019, our initial immediate need was to get out of those 200 Excel documents that we were using for planning and programming, right? As it came to the execution, folks were managing with their accounting systems, and they had their processes maybe not as linked back to a planning programming cycle. Because one thing that we look at is that the PPB&E should be a continuous circle, a
Uh-huh.
feedback loop, right? And so as we look for our future plans, that is the next step of those things, is integrating the budget and execution management responsibilities, which are not, like I said, really not the planner or programmer's responsibility or my office, but ultimately is critical to what I do because it does complete that feedback. And so one of our stakeholders, PEO DIMS, who managed some large IMIT projects for us, they're already leveraging the tool today to manage their year of execution budgeting, right? And doing their financial planning within the tool. And so now what we're working on is, since we're starting to get them to plan and program, and we know the data structure that they're planning and programming by, which ultimately should, roll over into that budgeting and execution year and become a closed loop feeder. Those are some of our next steps with the tool, is ultimately be able to move from one, module or cube into the next level of the budgeting and execution area. We're additionally looking at how to leverage the tool to manage and automate our funds distribution process. Um, and then finally, looking at the financial consolidation and reporting, right? Like all things in the world of finance, there's many different layers,
Mm-hmm.
stakeholders, office of responsibility, and as we try to become audible ready, figuring out how do we leverage this tool and bring that trust that how we're requesting our dollars is how we're executing and learning from that is some of those next steps as we continue to grow and mature uh, with our implementation. Next slide.
Great. So thanks for sharing your journey with us, Mike. It was extremely interesting to learn how you went from all these different solutions, these Excels and stuff like that, to one platform that can actually help all your stakeholders within the agency. So really great to hear about your story.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Thanks. So now the next slide will be on how to procure OneStream, because what's great for Canadian federal agencies is now that we have done all the work with the help of our sister company Oxaro. OneStream is now available through the SaaS supply arrangement. So what's that for a Canadian agency? It's a fast way of procurement. So the SaaS supply arrangement is this website that you guys have available to procure tools like this. So it's a direct path to the procurement. You have there pre-negotiated terms and conditions for contracts and etc. So it's based on innovative technology. You have access to leading tools, cutting edge technology, and best in industry product and software. It's compatible with protected B, medium availability, medium integrity, as defined in ITSG 33 by the Canadian Centre of Cybersecurity. Everything is pre-negotiated, terms, contracts, and etc. All done, and it includes access to implementation and professional services. So that's a lot of words to say. It's made to make it easy for you guys to procure. So it's in that environment, ready to use, and ready to be procured through the SaaS supply arrangement. So when you're in that website, look for Oxaro. Oxaro will be the supplier. Within Oxaro, you will see all the OneStream all the OneStream products and SKUs available. If you have more questions about the tool, you can see us at PD Week 2024. We will be in Ottawa from the November 19th to the 22nd at the Shaw Center in Ottawa at booth 40. The booth is a partnership between the three companies, Oxaro, OneStream, Raymond Chabot, Grant Thornton. So you will be able to see the three logos and come interact with us. Come ask us questions about how the tool works, about how it can help your type of agency, because we spoke a lot about help today, but there's clients in all the arrays of agencies. So like we were saying, there's Homeland Security, but there's also Coast Guard, there's the US Army, there's in Canada, the government of Alberta, Ontario, Metrolinx, stuff like that. So we can definitely either put you in contact with an agency that fits more your need as a reference, or discuss on how we can assist you in your journey to the digital transformation. So thank you for listening. Thank you being here. And if you have any question, I'll leave the last slide on right now. Here is my my email. You can, and my phone number. You can reach me at. And that's it for today. Thank you very much.